You're watching Mental Health with Marcie, and I'm Marcie. In today's video, we're going to talk about support networks and how they are the most important piece of the puzzle when it comes to mental health recovery. If you don't know what a support network is, I'm talking about different people in your life and different avenues you have set up that will help you really stay on track with your mental health recovery and also help you improve. And so, for example, in my life, I've got my professional mental health network and then also my personal one. So, professionally, I have a therapist that I can tap into and a psychiatrist, my regular primary care doctor. And so, those are really my professional team that is able to really kind of get my health on track, right? They have the experience. They know, for example, how different medications work, different therapies, different types of therapies, different methods, grounding techniques, etc. They have a lot of that knowledge and experience, especially working with a number of other folks who also struggle with mental health conditions. And so these folks are really trained to help you on your journey. And so I would highly recommend wherever you are on your spectrum of mental health, whether that be just from a little bit of stress to a diagnosed mental health condition, just to really tap into professionals because they have been so valuable in my journey and just making sure that I have the resources I need, and they also can really help prescribe medication if you need it, or just have that person to talk to, your therapist. And so I think they are a really integral part and a really good starting point in terms of a support network for mental health conditions. However, I don't think they should be the only ones that you rely on, especially because they're not always available. It's a weekend and evening, or you only meet with them once a month or once a week or once every other week. And so you really need that kind of personal touch as well. You need to have, in my opinion, other people you can reach out to besides your professional network. And so that can be family members, friends, peers who are going through similar issues. And so in my experience, I find it's good to have a diverse set. And so having folks who understand what you're going through, I think is really important, because you might have a lot of great, supportive friends and family members, but if they've never struggled, sometimes it can just be hard to relate and they don't necessarily know what to say or what will be helpful. So, for example, I will attend a virtual support group for other people who are struggling with similar mental health conditions. And so that's just a way to meet people who also struggle. You might know people in your friend network already who also struggle, but it's just good, in my opinion, to just get someone who understands, someone who's been there, who can just really empathize and maybe even have potential things that'll help you. And so that's why it's always good to tap into those networks, because there might be something someone else is doing that you've never thought of or you haven't tried. And so hearing their success or struggles with any kind of recovery techniques can be really helpful just in your own journey. And then really it just makes you feel like you're not alone, that you're not the only one going to see all these doctors, and you've got other people in your life who you may not know yet. Maybe you'll meet them, but there's other people, tons of people who are struggling with the same things, and it's not just you alone on this journey. And similarly with friends, I find that having that personal connection is really important, because you can really call on these people more often than having these, pre-set up support groups or professionals, meetings and things like that. So having a personal friend that you can call anytime or text or whenever you need, I think that's going to be really important, or at least it's been really important in my experience. And then also having kind of that virtual and in-person aspect. So for example, one of my close friends lives across the country, and so she's able to be there 1,000,000% with me over the phone and text and everything, but not being able to be in person can be difficult, because sometimes if you're in, or me personally, have been in a depressive episode, it's really hard to get out of it sometimes when you're like alone. And so just having someone you can go go to in person or they come to you, just having that time, I think, is just so valuable. And that's just because, in my experience, that depression especially really breeds in isolation. And so the more I'll sit alone with my own thoughts, it just starts to spiral. You start to think, or I do anyway, about all the things are not going well, they're never going to go well, and then all the anxiety and depression just comes out. And so having someone in person just to even talk through it about, or just talk about other things, it can be somewhat of a distraction. Just also, just if they have any support ideas, just someone to give you a hug. It's just, that's not always or necessarily going to fix your problem, someone giving you a hug, but it does just make a difference in my experience, having someone physically sitting next to you, and it can make it a lot easier to just get out of your isolated, irrational thinking. Because that's why I find as well is that I'll be really irrational, thinking by myself that, like, again, it's the end of the world, things are not going well, and they're never going to get better, blah blah blah. And so having those supportive friends in person is really helpful. And then I guess lastly, kind of back on the professionals front, having access to any kind of crisis hotlines and text resources are really important, just because that's if you have really in a crisis situation or near crisis. Doesn't have to be crisis, but if you're finding yourself having or me personally, if I've had any kind of crisis thoughts, then I definitely would want to and have utilized crisis lines before, because I'll find that even if there are people who are in your life, friends who have or haven't struggled, sometimes they just don't know what to say or what to do in a crisis situation, because they're just not trained for that. They don't know how people are going to react, what really is super dangerous, what isn't, what really requires medical intervention, etc. And so I would say it's just good to know your resources out there, so that if you ever find yourself in a crisis situation, or someone else you might know, just knowing that that's available and you're able to call, they're all free. Just being able to have that that access, I think, is so important. And then also not putting it on a close friend like that might not know really how to intermediate a crisis situation. And so again, I find it helpful to have this diverse set of support network folks, just because everyone plays their own unique part, right? Your best friend who's in person, like, they're likely not a psychiatrist trained in these types of medication, and so maybe they are. Great for you. But it's just good to have, I think, so many different people on your team helping you out. And then in my experience, it also helps keep you accountable, because if you only have your therapist telling you, oh, we need to think about this, you may not be likely to do it, depending on how good of a listener you are. Me, sometimes depends if I like what I hear. But having other people on your team who you tell this to, they can help you keep you accountable. Different friends, like, for example, I've been going through a depressive episode in the last few days due to recent events, and so having some folks just like checking on me and keeping me accountable with kind of basic tasks, checking on me, making sure I'm eating and drinking, which sounds so basic, but yet in at least my experience in depressive episodes and really bad ones, it just doesn't happen. And so having, even if you're like pissy about it like me, having someone be like, have you eaten, Marcie? Are you sure? Are you going to eat? When is that? And then eventually, it might sound annoying in the moment having someone bother you, but like, it's so important to have those people who are going to like bother you about it, but then also like be so proud of you when you do anything. And so whether that's, taking a shower, getting dressed, whatever those little things that you do, having those cheerleaders and, encouragers are just so valuable. And then having them across multiple places, like I said, having, my support group being so supportive, and then having friends being like, wow, Marcie, you did such a good job. So just hearing it different ways from different people also reinforces, number one, if you are doing things that are helping you get out of a depressive episode and things you should be proud of. So that's helpful. But then they also can help really, I guess, get rid of some of those thoughts that might fester in isolation. And so, having those thoughts where you're thinking, oh, is it everything ever going to be okay? Blah, blah, blah. Having multiple people tell you that it is going to be okay, it'll get better, etc. Just having that reinforced from multiple angles makes it more real and really, in my experience, tunes out that part of my irrational brain. And so that's why I think everyone should really invest in a support network, and that's not even financially so. I mean, some professionals are expensive, but a lot of resources are free, and of course, like your friends and everything are like that as well. But I would just say, in my experience, the more I've invested in my support network, the better off I've been, and the better off I'm able to rebound from depressive crises and not let them really impact me to the fullest extent. Because I know if I didn't have this vast support network, I would be a lot worse off when these depressive episodes come up. And so I'm just so glad that mental health is something that people are talking about a lot more, because the more we talk about it, the more people are able to come out of their isolation and really start on the road to recovery. And that's the craziest thing, is that we all, or at least me, I feel like feel like we're alone in this. And that's when it really, festers and gets so much worse. But then when we come together and really tap into our networks, that's when I find that my mental health starts to improve. And it's not a magic pill, even if you have your antidepressant or whatever. It's not, it's just another piece of the puzzle, but I think such an important one, because without it, it's really hard to stay accountable. It's really hard to be rational sometimes when your mental health condition is just telling you lies. And so just having those people in your corner, professional and personal, is just really important. So I hope that you can find your support network, whatever that might look like for your journey, but just know that there are a lot of resources out there, and I will link to some of those below in the description if you're not aware, just so you can take advantage of them too. So thank you so much for watching, and stay well, my friends.